I called an electrician to fix a faulty breaker at my son's house, while he and his wife were in Scottsdale. 6 hours later, he called me back. His voice was wrong in a way I recognized immediately, the way a voice gets when a man has seen something he can't unsee. "Mr. Graydon," he said, "I need you to come here. There's a little boy locked in the laundry room. He's got a flashlight, and he's niner Bernisadeware, and he won't answer me when I knock." I drove those 12 minutes in 7. My name is Sherman Graydon. I'm 65 years old, and I live in a 2-story colonial on Ridgemont Drive in Lexington, Kentucky. Same house I've been in for 31 years, the one my wife Pauline and I bought the spring after our son Tyler was born. Pauline passed away from a stroke 7 years ago. She was 57, and she was in the middle of making potato soup when it happened, and I still can't eat potato soup without having to set the bowl down and walk out of the room. For 38 years, I worked as a fire investigator for the Lexington Fire Department. Most people think that's a dramatic job. Some days it was. Mostly it was standing in the cold ash of somebody's ruined life, reading what the fire left behind. A fire investigator learns to look at a space and reconstruct what happened in it from physical evidence alone. Burn patterns, pour trails, the position of objects before the heat moved them. You learn that a scene never lies, even when the people inside it do. I retired 3 years ago. People ask if I miss it. I miss the work. I don't miss what the work did to my ability to walk into a room without automatically cataloging what's wrong with it. My son Tyler is 32. He's a marketing coordinator for a regional brewery chain, makes decent money, drives a blue Tacoma he takes to the car wash every other Saturday the way his mother used to take him to church. After Pauline died, Tyler and I talked almost every Sunday evening. Not about anything important. The Wildcats. Whether I needed the gutters cleaned, which restaurant had gone under downtown. Just the sound of each other's voice once a week. The way you maintain something without saying you're maintaining it. That changed when he met Bryn Calloway 2.5 years ago at some rooftop event his company sponsored. She was 28, worked in digital marketing on a freelance basis, had what people used to call an Instagram presence, and what I call a full-time occupation, performing your life for strangers. She was striking and magnetic, and she walked into Tyler's apartment the first time I met her and immediately rearranged the furniture. It was just that she had strong opinions. People with strong opinions can be good for people who drift. Tyler had been drifting since his mother died. They got married 14 months after they met. Small ceremony, destination, a vineyard outside Charlottesville that cost more per head than my first car. I was there. I sat at a table with people I had never met, and I smiled at the right moments, and I told myself this was what happiness looked like now, and I should let it be. 18 months before that wedding, Tyler had come to me about a house. He'd been renting a place over on Tates Creek Road, and Bryn had found a house she liked in the Chevy Chase neighborhood. 4 bedrooms, craftsman style. The kind of house that photographs beautifully. The mortgage was more than they could manage on top of Tyler's student loans. I still owned a brick ranch out on Belmead Farm Road, an investment property I'd bought back in 2009, and had been meaning to sell for 2 years. I told Tyler and his wife they could live there, rent-free, while they got on their feet. I kept the deed in my name on the advice of my attorney, a practical woman named Denise Harlow, who has been telling me to document everything for 15 years, and has been right every single time. Tyler hugged me at my kitchen table the night I gave him the keys and said, "Dad, I'm not going to forget this." Most people mean that when they say it. The Sunday calls got shorter, then less frequent, then they stopped. I'd reach out and get a text back. "Busy week, things are crazy, I'll call you soon." When I suggested stopping by Belmead Farm Road, there was always something. Bryn was repainting. Tyler had a work deadline. The guest room was being converted to an office. After about 8 months of that, I stopped suggesting. I want you to understand something. I'm not a man who asks for much. I raised Tyler to be his own person, and I meant it. But there's a difference between giving your child room to breathe and learning to be grateful for a birthday text. So, when my phone lit up with Tyler's name on a Thursday morning in late September, I felt something I didn't quite have a name for. Not happiness exactly. More like the feeling of a door you'd stopped expecting to open suddenly cracking. "Hey Dad." No preamble. No "how have you been?" Listen. Bryn and I are heading to Scottsdale next Tuesday. She's got a wellness conference. We're turning it into a little anniversary trip, 7 days. The thing is, there's an issue with the breaker panel. Kitchen keeps tripping whenever she uses the espresso machine and the microwave at the same time. And the side door's been sticking. Could you call somebody to take a look while we're gone? I sat at my kitchen table looking at a crossword I'd given up on 3 days before. 7 days in Scottsdale. But the breaker panel apparently couldn't wait for a weekend when they were home. I don't have a key to that house anymore, Tyler. You asked for the spare back in February. Right. I'll leave one in the magnetic box on the back of the gas meter. Have them come Wednesday if you can. We fly out Tuesday morning. I asked why they couldn't schedule someone when they were actually home. He said, Bryn didn't like having contractors in the house when she was there. She found it disruptive to her workflow. I told him I'd handle it. He said, thanks, Dad. And the line went dead, without a goodbye, the way a transaction ends when both parties have gotten what they came for. I sat there for a while after that. I kept thinking about how he'd called me to manage something in that house, but only while no one he cared about was home. I called a man named Sal Mancini. Sal had done electrical work at 2 of my rental properties over the years. The kind of electrician who fixes the problem instead of finding new ones to bill you for. He picked up on the second ring and said he could get there Wednesday afternoon, no problem. Wednesday morning, I drove out to Belmead Farm Road early to locate the key and make sure the house was accessible. I let myself in through the back door. My first thought was that I'd walked into someone else's house. The brick ranch I'd bought as an investment property had been a plain, functional place. What I walked into now looked like a stage set. Shiplap on the accent walls. A kitchen island that hadn't been there before. Floating shelves with amber glass and trailing plants. The kind of interior you see in sponsored content, which I understand now was exactly the point. There were photographs on every surface. Tyler and his wife at what looked like a tropical resort. His wife and 2 women at a restaurant, the 2 of them in front of a color-coordinated Christmas tree. I counted 11 frames in the front hallway alone. I stood in the middle of that living room for a long moment, and then I understood what was wrong. There was not a single photograph in the entire house that showed a child. I need to tell you something about Tyler, something I hadn't let myself say out loud before that morning. Tyler had a son. His name was Finn. He was 5 years old. Finn's mother was a young woman named April Reston, who Tyler had been with for about a year and a half before everything fell apart between them. April died in a car accident on I-64 in the winter of 2021, when Finn was not quite 2 years old. Black ice, the middle of the night, and she didn't suffer. Tyler had been awarded full custody. There was a Social Security survivor benefit, $1,180 a month, direct deposit into an account in Finn's name with Tyler as the custodian. April's mother had also passed a few months later, and before she died, she'd set up a small trust for Finn, the kind that pays out monthly distributions for the child's care and maintenance. Together it came to just over $2,000 a month, designated for Finn's well-being. I had met Finn twice, once just after custody was finalized, when he was barely walking, and once at a birthday party at a Chuck E. Cheese when Finn turned 3. I'd brought a dinosaur set. Tyler had seemed distracted the entire time. Bryn hadn't been there. After that, whenever I asked about Finn, Tyler found a way to change the subject. I told myself it was complicated. Grief, transition, a new relationship. I told myself Tyler was handling it the way he knew how. Standing in that house, looking at 30-some photographs of 2 people and not one image of a 5-year-old boy, I understood I had been telling myself too many things for too long. I walked through the rooms, making sure everything was accessible for Sal. Kitchen, back bedroom, utility room. When I reached the laundry room at the end of the hall, the handle didn't turn. Locked. Not a deadbolt, a little pin lock, the cheap kind used on interior closet doors, but locked on a laundry room, from the outside, inside a house where 2 adults lived. I have stood at thousands of points of origin over 38 years. The place where the fire started, the thing that sparked it. You develop a sense for those spots. There's an energy to them even after the fact. My hand on that locked laundry room door felt exactly like that. I told myself I'd ask Tyler about it when he got back. I went home. Sal called me at 3:47 in the afternoon. I know the exact time because I looked at my watch when his name came up on the screen, the way you mark a moment before you understand why. Mr. Graydon. His voice was flat in a way Sal's voice was never flat. Sal Mancini was a man who sang along to the radio while he worked, and called everyone brother regardless of how long he'd known them. This was not that voice. I need you to come to this house. There's a little boy in the laundry room. He's been in there I don't know how long. He's got a flashlight. I can see the light under the door. That's how I knew. He went quiet when I knocked. He won't answer. Please come. I said, Sal, don't try to open the door. Sit down on the floor right next to it where he can hear you clearly, and talk low and easy. Tell him your name. Tell him nobody's in trouble. Tell him a friend is coming. I was in my truck before he said okay. I drove that distance in a way I won't remember afterward. Just the cold weight in my chest that I recognized from 100 fire scenes, the compression of knowing something is wrong before you know the shape of what it is. Sal was sitting cross-legged on the hallway floor when I got there, speaking quietly toward the gap at the bottom of the door. He looked up at me, and his eyes were wet. A man I'd watched fix a live panel ankle-deep in standing water without breaking a sweat, sitting on a hallway floor with wet eyes. I crouched down outside the door. I kept my voice low, and even the way I used to keep it at fire scenes when the family was still on site. My name is Sherman. I'm Tyler's dad. I'm not going to open the door unless you say I can. Nobody's in trouble. You're safe right now. I'm just going to sit here a minute, okay? Silence, then the small, careful sound of someone shifting weight. Is there anybody named Finn in there? A very long pause. How do you know my name? The voice was 5 years old, and it was the most controlled 5-year-old voice I had ever heard. Not scared child controlled. Trained child controlled. There is a difference, and any person who has spent enough time around children in difficult circumstances knows it immediately. Because I'm your grandfather, I said. Your dad is my son. My name is Grandpa Sherman. Another pause. You came to my birthday. You brought the dinosaurs. I pressed my palm flat against the wall to hold myself steady. That's right, I said. The green Brachiosaurus and the Stegosaurus. The little blue one, too. That's right. Can I come in, Finn? The lock clicked from the inside. The door opened 3 inches, one eye, brown, watching me from the level of the floor. I kept my hands visible and stayed where I was. The laundry room was about 8 by 10 feet, washer and dryer, shelves with detergent. Against the far wall, between the dryer and the corner, there was a folded sleeping bag on the floor, a pillow with a Superman pillowcase, a flashlight, 2 books with the covers torn off, and a small portable cooler with a combination lock on the zipper. In the opposite corner, a plastic storage bin with a snap-on lid, pushed tight against the baseboard. A paper plate with the dried crust of a peanut butter sandwich sat on top of the dryer. Finn was sitting against the dryer with his knees pulled to his chest. He was small for 5, thin in that particular way that takes sustained time to arrive at. His hair needed cutting. He had on jeans that were too short and a faded green t-shirt. He was wearing 1 sock. I asked if I could sit inside the room with him. He nodded. I asked if he was hungry. I have food in the box, he said. Bryn put it in there. Can you tell me how many days you've been in here, Finn? He thought about it the way a child does when they've been tracking time by feel rather than by calendar. Since the airplane day, he said. They had left on Tuesday. It was Wednesday afternoon. I kept my voice level. I asked about the box. He explained that Bryn had packed the cooler with sandwiches in zip bags, juice boxes, crackers, and 1 apple. There was a combination, and she had shown him the numbers. He could open it himself. For how many days? He held up 4 fingers. Then he put 1 down. 3 and a little more, he said, with the seriousness of a child who has learned to ration. 7 days total. She had portion provisions for a 7-day trip. I asked about the bathroom. Finn looked toward the bin in the corner with the snap-on lid. Bryn put a bag inside it, he said carefully, like it was a procedure he'd been taught. She showed me how. I put the lid back when I'm done. I am a man who has walked through burned buildings. I have written reports in the flat, neutral language of documentation about scenes that would have undone most people. I sat on the laundry room floor of my own son's house, and I pressed my back against the washing machine, and I breathed through my nose for a long moment so that the 5-year-old in front of me would not see his grandfather lose the thread. Finn, I said, has this happened before? That you stay in here while Bryn has people over." He nodded like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "When the camera people come," he said. "And when they do the cooking videos in the kitchen. And sometimes just when her friends are here, because she says I make things complicated." "What does complicated mean, Finn?" He shrugged with one shoulder. "It means I'm not part of it." I held out my hands. He came to me on his own. He weighed almost nothing. I carried him out of that room. Sal was in the kitchen. He'd found a box of cereal and poured a bowl and gotten milk from the refrigerator, and when I walked in with Finn, he set it on the table without a word and stepped back. He's been feeding children since his own were small. He didn't need instructions. Finn ate 2 bowls, then 4 crackers from the sleeve Sal found in the cabinet. He ate quietly, without hurrying, the way children eat when they've learned that drawing attention to their hunger is its own kind of risk. I made 2 calls from the kitchen while Sal sat with him at the table and let Finn demonstrate how the flashlight worked. I called 911 first. I gave the address. I told the dispatcher I was a retired Lexington fire investigator with 38 years of service, and I had a malnourished child, documented confinement, insufficient provisions for the duration of adult absence, and an unsupervised minor without a responsible adult or emergency contact. The dispatcher knew the codes. She said units were on the way. Then I called Denise Harlow. I told her what I had. She didn't ask a single unnecessary question, she said. "Document everything with your phone before you leave. I'll be at your house at 8 o'clock tonight." 2 officers arrived first. One of them, a young officer named Webb, had reckless instincts. He crouched to Finn's level immediately, introduced himself, asked about the flashlight, like it was the most interesting thing he'd seen all week. The other officer, Chang, stepped back and let me walk her through the scene room by room. The laundry room, the cooler with its combination lock, the bin in the corner, the sleeping bag, the paper plate, the scratches at the base of the door from something small and persistent, testing the gap over a long period of time. A CPS investigator arrived within the hour. A woman named Gail Hendricks, who carried herself like someone who had been doing this work long enough to have stopped expecting it to surprise her. She wrote down everything I told her, without inflection or commentary. Then she and Officer Chang went into that laundry room and photographed everything. The cooler, the bin, the Superman pillowcase, the 2 books missing their covers. They photographed the scratch pattern at the base of the door. I took Finn to a pediatrician the next morning, Dr. Yvonne Marsh, who had been recommended by Officer Chang as someone good with children who'd been through difficult things. She was. She examined Finn with the patience of someone who understood that the examination itself was a form of record, and when she came to sit with me afterward, she set a clipboard on the desk and looked at me over it. Significant caloric deficit consistent with irregular feeding over an extended period. Vitamin D levels below normal range. Mild anemia. An untreated cavity. A scar on his left forearm she wanted to x-ray. There had been a fracture, old enough to have healed on its own. Slightly misaligned, because no one had taken him to a doctor when it happened. No record of any pediatric care in Fayette County for over 18 months. No school enrollment. No immunizations past his 2-year well visit. As far as the state of Kentucky was concerned, Finn Reston Graydon had effectively ceased to exist in the system sometime in 2022. I met with Denise Harlow that evening. She spread everything across her desk, and she looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at me and said, "Sherman, do you understand what you've given me?" I told her I had some idea. She said, "Emergency kinship placement petition, filed that morning. Immediate freeze on the Social Security custodial account and the trust distribution account, pending forensic audit. Criminal referral to the Commonwealth's attorney for child endangerment. Unlawful confinement of a minor and misappropriation of protected federal benefits. A separate referral for his wife as a knowing and active participant." She pulled up his wife's Instagram account on her laptop. The most recent post, uploaded 4 days before they left for Scottsdale, was a cooking reel filmed in the kitchen at Belmead Farm Road. 112,000 views. 3 sponsors tagged in the caption. Denise looked at me across the desk and said, "Content filmed directly above the room where your grandson was being confined. We are going to nail every piece of this to the wall." Tyler landed at Bluegrass Airport on a Tuesday afternoon, and found out, before he reached baggage claim, that there was an active child welfare hold with his name on it, a freeze on 2 accounts, and a request from the Lexington Police Department for his voluntary appearance for questioning. He called me from the terminal. "Dad." His voice was somewhere between fury and freefall. "Dad, what did you do?" I told him what I did. "I went to the house to let Sal in, the way you asked me to. I found your son in the laundry room. I found the cooler. I found the bin. I found 3.5 days' worth of sandwiches, portioned for a 7-day trip. He's fine, he does that. He likes to play in." Tyler. I kept my voice quiet the way I learned to keep it at fire scenes when I didn't want to disturb what the evidence was still trying to tell me. "Stop. I have been reading scenes for 38 years. I know what a space looks like when someone has been living in it for longer than an afternoon. I know what a child looks like when he has been trained to be invisible. Don't explain to me what I saw with my own eyes." Silence on the line. "The accounts are frozen," I said. "Denise has the bank records. 26 months of withdrawals from Finn's Social Security benefit and his trust, and the math lines up almost exactly with the lease payments on your wife's Range Rover and the membership charges at that Scottsdale wellness center she favors. You are going to find an attorney before morning. You are not going to set foot on Belmad Farm Road because the locks were changed yesterday afternoon and that property is in my name. And you are going to understand one more thing before this call ends." I heard him breathing. "April Reston left your son 2 things when she died: her last name and her dignity. You are going to call him Finn Reston Graydon from this moment forward. The name I am petitioning the court to restore for the rest of your natural life. That is not up for discussion, not ever." The line went dead. The months that followed were the hardest I've had since I buried Pauline. Gail Hendricks moved fast on the kinship placement. Finn came to live with me in the Colonial on Ridgemont Drive. I gave him the bedroom at the top of the stairs, the one with the window that looks out over the backyard maple that goes orange in October. I bought him a real bed. He picked out the comforter himself at the store, navy blue with silver rockets on it. I bought a moon-shaped nightlight because the first 2 weeks he asked to keep the flashlight on, and I decided a proper nightlight was better for both of us. I bought him clothes that fit, boots that fit, a backpack. I enrolled him in kindergarten at a school 3 blocks from the house, and his teacher, a woman named Ms. Torres, cried quietly in the hallway after reading his intake paperwork, and then walked into the classroom and introduced him to the class with the warmest voice I have ever heard outside of a church. I learned to make breakfast for a 6-year-old. Scrambled eggs a specific softness, toast without the crusts, apple juice, no pulp. I learned that he didn't like the bathroom door all the way closed at night, and I learned not to make a big deal of it, and I kept the hall light on. He stopped going rigid when a door closed behind him, somewhere around the 3rd month. The legal proceedings shaped themselves slowly, and then all at once, his wife accepted a plea, 2 years probation, a felony record, mandatory evaluation, no contact with any minor child. Her Instagram account, built on a lifestyle brand, filmed in the kitchen, directly above Finn's laundry room, collapsed in under a week when the Lexington Herald leader ran the story. The sponsors dropped within 48 hours. The followers turned, the way followers do when they understand the thing they were celebrating. Tyler went to trial. His attorney argued that Finn had been given a designated space, that the arrangement had been temporary, that Tyler hadn't fully understood what his wife had implemented. The judge, a woman named Judge Teresa Colburn, who had spent 11 years as a guardian ad litem before taking the bench, listened to that argument with the expression of someone who has spent 11 years hearing exactly that argument. She terminated Tyler's parental rights at the conclusion of the second hearing. She granted me kinship guardianship and approved my adoption petition at the third. Tyler received 3 years in state prison for criminal child endangerment and felony misappropriation of protected federal benefits. Judge Colburn said, "One thing at sentencing I will carry for the rest of my life," she said. "You did not simply neglect your child. You systematically erased him from the life you chose to live, while depositing his survivor benefits into accounts that funded that life. That is not a lapse in judgment. That is a deliberate, sustained choice, made every single month for over 2 years." I drove home from the courthouse and sat in Finn's room for a while in the chair by the window, looking at the rocket comforter and the moon nightlight and the small shelf I'd put up for the books we read together before bed. He was at school. I had 2 hours before pickup. I sat there until the afternoon light caught the maple outside, and then I went downstairs and started dinner. That was 15 months ago. Finn is 6 now, going on 7 in the spring. He weighs what a 6-year-old should weigh. His arm healed straight after the orthopedist reset it. He has a best friend named Cooper from his class, who comes over Friday afternoons, and they build an elaborate system of ramps and tracks for their toy cars in the hallway that I have to step over every time I need to get to the kitchen, and I would not move a single piece of it for anything. He laughs out loud now. He didn't really laugh, the full kind, head back, the real thing, for the first 8 weeks he was here. The first time he did, I was pretending I couldn't figure out the child-proof cap on the ketchup bottle, and he thought it was the funniest thing that had ever happened to a human being. I turned around and found something very interesting to look at in the back of the cabinet until I was fit to face him again. He calls me Grandpa Sherm. He decided that on his own. He sleeps with the moon nightlight on and the hall light on and the door cracked exactly 3 inches. I expect in 6 months he'll need 2 of those things. In a year, maybe 1. One day, none. We're not rushing any of it. People ask me sometimes whether I regret it. Making the calls, the legal proceedings, watching my own son go to prison. I tell them what's true. I spent 38 years reading fire scenes. I know the difference between an accident and a choice. I know what a space looks like when someone placed something there deliberately and hoped no one would look closely enough to understand what they were seeing. Tyler made a choice. Every month, for 26 months, he looked at a bank statement and made the same choice again. I didn't create those choices. I just refused to look away from what they added up to after I'd seen it with my own eyes. I was a fire investigator for 38 years. I thought when I turned in my badge I was done reading rooms for what they were trying not to tell me. Turns out I had one more scene to work. I'm glad I hadn't lost the skill. If you've made it this far, do me a favor. Go home and look at the children in your life. The ones who are too quiet. The ones who eat fast, like they're not sure there'll be more. The ones who flinch at doors. They are telling you something with everything they're not saying out loud. Be the kind of person who speaks that language. And if you want to hear about the day Finn found the photograph of his mother, April, in the inside pocket of my jacket, the one I'd been keeping, because Tyler never asked for it back, and what he said when he asked me who she was, that's the next story I'm going to tell. Good night from Lexington. Go check on your kids.